Good Tuesday evening. I'm Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls, and again today it was very hot, not just here locally, but across the eastern half of the U.S. We've had record high temperatures today in some portions of the United States because of this heat dome that we've been telling you about for the last several days, and it's still going to have its grips on the eastern half of the U.S. for at least another day or so, and then we should start to feel some improvements later this week. And a lot of what it's coming down to really is the jet stream and a really strong high pressure system. So take a look at this map that you see on your screen here. What this is representing is the jet stream. So you see that really large dip in the jet stream over the Pacific Northwest down toward California. That's called a trough. So that's allowing cooler air from the north to filter to the south. But then we have this really large ridge that's across the eastern half of the U.S. That's why it's so hot. And this weather pattern that we've been experiencing, it's going to continue for a few more days. But watch as I set this in motion, and what you're going to see is this ridge, so where that jet stream takes a dive to the north there, it's going to begin to even itself out, becoming more zonal, meaning east and west. So for those of you hoping for a pattern change, it's coming, but we have to be patient until the later half of this week, likely into next week as well. And for a lot of us next week, that's when we're finally going to return to near normal temperatures. But between now and then, when we have that large ridge in place, we're looking at very, very warm, very muggy conditions continuing, not just across Chicagoland, but again, for much of the eastern half of the U.S. Take a look at the high temperatures today. So in places like New York, near 100 degrees for the actual high temperature. But if you notice here, generalizing everything, the eastern half of the U.S., many locations ended up topping out in the 90s. Again, in Chicago, we are in the 90s today. 94 degrees was our high temperature. But once you factored in high humidity, we had those triple-digit heat indices again, and that's going to continue for the next couple of days. So tomorrow, depending on exactly where you're at in Chicagoland, you could be feeling some relief, especially closer to the lakefront, but farther inland, it's still going to be another very hot day, and then we're right back at it again on Thursday. But from this map here, you'll notice that we do have the cooler conditions across places like Montana, down into the 70s. That's that trough that I was just mentioning to you on the jet stream map. Now let's talk about the heat potential here. So this is a map representing essentially what we went through today. We have that high pressure system, the heat dome, if you will. So this high, you have sinking air underneath the high pressure system. So that allows for warming conditions, warming temperatures, and that heat can kind of build over time, especially as that high pressure system really isn't moving all that much. So that's why it was so hot today. But compare this to what's on tap for tomorrow. It looks about the same. If anything, that high pressure system has just kind of jolted to the west ever so slightly. So it's still over the same exact regions, the mid-Atlantic states up to the northeast, looking at potentially record-breaking heat again, if not conditions that are running about 15 to 20, maybe even 25 degrees above average for this time of the year. So the satellite and radar, notice how across the U.S., kind of cutting us in half almost, we have a stationary front. South of that front is where this high pressure system is. So south of the front, that's where we've had the extreme heat today. But for locations that are riding right along this frontal boundary, we actually got some pretty brief relief. So on the northern side of this frontal boundary here, we were actually able to pick up north and northeasterly winds. And for us here locally next to the Great Lakes, well, it made a really big difference in our temperatures. So we did have a high temperature in the 90s previously today in the morning, the midday hours. But then during the afternoon, the Chicago area actually dropped into the 70s. Along the lakefront and at O'Hare, we dropped down into the low to mid 80s. So as soon as that frontal boundary sank to the south just a little bit, it made a really big difference. Although along this ridge that we've been talking about here and this frontal boundary, you get what is called the ring of fire weather pattern. So oftentimes when you have a ridge that's in the same place for multiple days in a row, you get a frontal boundary and low pressure systems that can ride right along that ridge and right along the jet stream. And so in the same exact locations, day after day after day, are being hit with showers and thunderstorms. And that's what we're starting to see happening here, especially as the stationary front just sort of sits over the same region. And that's what we're going to be dealing with here locally as well. So the Storm Prediction Center has our area in Chicago stretching over towards southern Michigan into northern Indiana, northwestern Ohio, and then back toward the Plains states in a marginal risk, which is a level 1 of 5, meaning isolated severe storms are possible. But compare this map to the one I'm about to show you right now. So I just switched the map over to tomorrow, and it's about the same. So a lot of the same regions are going to be dealing with isolated strong to severe thunderstorms being possible, riding right along that frontal boundary that's just going to be meandering north and south day after day, triggering those showers and thunderstorms. And then even looking beyond tomorrow, so this is the severe weather outlook taking us into Thursday, and you'll notice that a lot of the same locations that were highlighted for Wednesday are also highlighted on Thursday. So we're still stuck in this same exact weather pattern with the heat, the humidity, and the showers and thunderstorms. That's going to continue through the end of this week, and then we should finally start to see this pattern breaking down late this week and then into this upcoming weekend. So then we'll start to see the storminess decreasing. We'll start to see the heat trying to decrease anyway. But I think a lot of us are going to be holding on to those upper 80s, low 90s, likely all the way through this week, this weekend. And then finally next week, going into the 4th of July, we're going to return to near normal. But in the meantime, we really need to be prepared for those storms. Again, it's a low end risk for severe storms. What a marginal risk really means is that isolated severe thunderstorms are possible. And this could be that it's limited in duration or in coverage. And I think over the next couple of days, it's really going to be more about the coverage. So really similar to what we're experiencing today, we have just isolated strong to severe thunderstorms that have been around the region. And that's going to be the case for tomorrow and likely into Thursday as well. So the radar right now, you can see just how scattered this activity is. Not everybody is picking up that rain here locally, but those of us that are, we have really, really heavy downpours. Previously today, right around 6:15 or so, we actually had a severe thunderstorm that was rolling through portions of southern LaSalle County. That since has kind of fizzled out, and now it's just average showers and thunderstorms rolling through. We no longer have any severe thunderstorms to let you know about, but there were actually signs of low-level rotation because the environment out there has just a little bit of spin in it. So a couple funnel clouds were actually reported with that severe thunderstorm that was rolling through portions of LaSalle County. Right now, we have heavier downpours stretching from places like McHenry County just to through Woodstock, actually seeing some pretty heavy rain. Same thing over into Lake County. We're seeing some of those bursts of heavier rain. And then down into Cook County, it's fairly light showers at the moment. Near Batavia, we have a brief heavier downpour, but a lot of the heavier stuff really seems to be across the far south and southwestern portion of the area. For those of you in LaSalle County, you've had round after round of showers and thunderstorms over the last few hours. That's likely going to continue going throughout the next few hours here, and then we'll start to see this activity beginning to wane going through the later hours of tonight and then certainly into tomorrow morning. Now, the 24-hour rainfall, this is a good thing. We are still dealing with drought-like conditions across the region. We have moderate drought conditions for most areas. For those of you in LaSalle, Grundy County, Kankakee, into northwest Indiana, you are considered to be abnormally dry, but regardless, all of us could really use the rain around here, and we're finally going to be adding to that each and every day this week with those daily shower and thunderstorm chances. If we zoom things in a little ways to LaSalle County, you'll notice near Tonopah, so a couple hours ago, we had that severe storm that was rolling through, but it was only moving at about 15 to 25 miles per hour. So it was just absolutely dumping down on southwestern lower LaSalle. And we picked up almost 1.5 inches of rain over the last 24 hours, bouncing things over to southern Cook County around 4 and 5 o'clock this afternoon. We were seeing storms redeveloping and training, meaning that they were kind of redeveloping over the same exact location and then moving through. So southern Cook County, places like Tinley Park, actually picked up over 1 inch of rain in just a few hours. And then over into northwestern Indiana, most of northwest Indiana, where you're seeing those brighter shades of green showing up, that's where we had a couple showers and storms rolling through, producing about 1/2 inch of rain. But definitely those heavier downpours, those were farther off to the west, the southwest, and then also in southern Cook County. So Futurecast here, this is going to take us throughout the next couple of days. What I want you to do with this map here is watch that stationary front and watch how it really doesn't move all that much. So that high pressure system that's keeping that heat in place, that heat dome that we've been telling you about across the eastern half of the U.S., it's not going anywhere tonight into tomorrow. It stays in almost the exact same location, and that frontal boundary is still going to be the focus for those showers and thunderstorms. Notice that low pressure system that's parked right over, it looks like southwestern South Dakota. That's going to ride right along that frontal boundary and eventually move across the Chicagoland area. So this is those waves of showers and storms, those waves of systems becoming that ring of fire weather pattern that I was just mentioning to you. So that's what we're stuck in for the next couple of days. Heavy downpours certainly going to remain a concern all the way through the end of this work week. And then finally next week, I think we're going to see this pattern beginning to break apart, and then we're going to get back to normal. Coming up right after this break, I'm going to be touching on the very first named storm of the Atlantic season. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back, and checking in on the tropics. It's been a very active start to the season in the eastern Pacific, but not so much in the Atlantic. So in the Atlantic, that's not unheard of. In the month of June, we're still kind of waiting for those sea surface temperatures to really warm up to sustain a lot of the tropical activity, but that's beginning to happen, although roughly about 12 hours after Tropical Storm Andrea became Tropical Storm Andrea, it's going to dissipate later on this evening and tonight. So right now, in the center of your screen, you can see a spin in the atmosphere, a spin in the clouds there. So this is Tropical Storm Andrea, not really packing much of a punch. So we have maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour. Wind gusts are up to around 50 miles per hour. And remember, for a tropical storm to be considered a tropical storm, it needs to have maximum sustained winds of 39 miles per hour. So this thing is just barely a named storm out in the center of the Atlantic, and it's not really going to be impacting anybody either. If we zoom things in here, notice tonight how this is likely going to be downgraded to a post-tropical remnant low, and that's meaning that it's no longer tropical storm strength. So it's only spent about 12 hours or so as a tropical storm, and it's likely going to dissipate tonight and then into tomorrow. So far, it's still been a very calm start to the Atlantic hurricane season. The next 10 days around here locally, hot. We're going to be hot for the next couple of days, upper 80s, low 90s. Although for those of you that are closer to the lakefront, we are expecting temperatures in the 70s close to the lakefront tomorrow. So a break from the heat before the 90s come back. I'll have a detailed look at your local forecast coming up on the news at 9. We'll see you then.